Welcome to the MSL 411, a podcast designed to equip both aspiring and experienced MSLs with the resources they need to level up their career toolkit. The heart of this podcast is to take the same industry knowledge and advice that we share with our own candidates and make it available and accessible to anyone looking for answers. So if you have questions, you've come to the right place. We're here to give you the 411. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Hey all, and welcome back to the MSL 411 podcast. We are really excited about today's episode. We have another special guest with us today, and I think it's someone you guys are really going to enjoy hearing from and who has a lot to say that's going to be applicable to all of our lives, basically. So today we're sitting down with Tiffney Palmer, who is a PharmD and a Senior MSL. She's also a clinical HIV specialist, women's health content writer, and advocate. And she is going to be talking about not only her journey from pharmacist to HIV specialist to MSL, but also talking about something that pops up in a lot of our lives, imposter syndrome, and how she has dealt with that throughout her career and in her personal and professional life, and how she has learned to overcome that or work through that to be successful in her profession, in her career. We also want to get to know her a little bit beyond the MSL role. So we're going to be talking a little bit about her particular passions and her personality, of course, and the things that drive her and motivate her. So very excited to have you on the podcast, Tiffany. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Linda. You made me sound like somebody I would want to meet.
Well, I was very excited to meet you. And of course, for those of you out there listening, when I was talking to my colleagues about who would be great to have on the podcast, not even with a topic in mind, just who is a great personality, a great person to talk about things that matter to aspiring and experienced MSLs. Tiffany, your name came up first out of the gate. And so really excited to talk to you today. Want to get started, of course, just with a couple of light icebreaker questions. You are a Tennessee gal. And
Yes.
I love that. So what is something that is distinctly Tennessee about you?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. And something I love to talk about is where I'm from, Tennessee. I'm actually from a very small town called Covington, Tennessee, in the Memphis area. But I think something that the state of Tennessee just has across the board, whether you go from West to Middle or East Tennessee, is a really strong history of musical influence. And it's across so many genres. A lot of people think of Tennessee and Dolly Parton and country music. But we also not only are big in country music, but we have a really strong history in rock and roll with Elvis Presley and some others. We have a really strong history with blues. We have a really strong history with gospel and hip hop. So while I cannot sing, that is definitely not my talent. I love music. If I were to be on one of those shows like Beat Shazam or Can You Name the Lyrics, I would probably win just because I love music across all the genres. And my friends will tell you, if you go to a wedding or anywhere else with me where there's music involved, there will not be a song that I don't know.
I love that.
So that is my Tennessee piece of me.
That's fantastic. We are huge music lovers on our team here. Starts with our boss, Mary, who knows everything about every band, and you can't stump her on, have you heard this band? Have you heard this song? But she always keeps us in the know on music and artists and what's out there. And all of us are just big music fans also. So I love that. So you may have actually answered my next question, but let's say if you could become an expert in any random skill that's not work related, of course, let's take singing off the table actually, because we've already talked about it. If anything was singing or work related, what would your super skill be?
So my super skill would have to be, I would say, if I could act or just like perform live on a stage, mix that with singing. I cannot leave that out. I would love to be a Broadway star. That is the one thing I wish I could do, but I just did not get the talent genes to make that happen. But I love musicals. I think Rent is one of my favorite. Actually, let me take that back. I think Wicked is number one on my list. It teaches wonderful life lessons with great music, great cast, all of the things, followed by Rent and several others. I just love a live performance on stage.
I love Wicked. So my husband
Who doesn't?
I know. My husband won't agree to sit down and watch the movie that recently came out, but I've seen it live on Broadway. I loved it. And one day I'll just have to have a girls' day with some friends and watch the movie, I guess, because I am
What
not.
would be even better, have a girls' day and reenact it.
Oh, have a sing
Might
along.
have to keep it a secret depending on what the final product looks like.
But
Yes.
well, I love this. I definitely want to get into our topic for the day and learning about you more on a professional level and what drives you in that. So I wanted to start talking about your professional journey. You are a PharmD. You've been in the prescribing provider role. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like navigating that role?
That role came to me almost in a surprise. So, several years ago, the state of Tennessee began to allow PharmDs to practice under a collaborative practice agreement with supervising physicians to prescribe preventive therapies. And it's one of those things where it's not something that is typical for a pharmacist. I think it's one of those things that even if you've been practicing for years, you almost feel like it's so out of reach and out of your realm that you don't even put it to the front of your mind. So I was approached to help start up a specialty pharmacy that was going to also be a part of an outpatient clinic that was going to be focused on HIV prevention services, which is one of my really big passions, preventing HIV and making sure people understand the options that are out there. So when this opportunity presented itself, there was a part of me that was thinking there has to be somebody else who would be better for this job. Somebody who's done a residency and a fellowship and somebody who's been in more of an inpatient or hospital setting. And the team around me kept encouraging me, we want you for a reason. You've got the experience. You know how to really engage with people and kind of break some of the walls down, especially in a space like HIV and STIs where there's a lot of stigma. A lot of people may not want to come and open up about their reasons for seeking HIV prevention. And finally, I was convinced. And I will say it was one of, if not the most impactful parts of my professional career so far. Really being able to sit down with people and make them feel comfortable. Let them know that I'm here to help them. And in order to do that, I just need them to kind of help me understand what their journey looks like, where they're coming from, and work with the rest of the team in our facility and our clinic to make sure people had access to what could be life-saving for not only themselves, but for other people they know, their partners, partners, their family members, to make sure they're putting their safety first so they can be around as long as they can and live a full and healthy life. So I would say that was one of, if not the most impactful parts of my professional journey so far, and really trusting myself and leaning on all of the preparation I'd done for so many years. Just, the day to day, going to work, doing the job, learning the skills, all of that came full circle. And I definitely appreciate every moment of that and appreciate the opportunity that was given to me by my supervising physician, Dr. Sean Hayden. I cannot leave him out, as well as all of the staff and everyone I worked with in that position.
So moving from pharmacist to HIV specialist, although it was a passion, was something that really you kind of had to be convinced that you were the right person for.
Yes, which is crazy when I look back on it because I've earned everything that came along the way. I've got the
Mhm.
PharmD, I've done clinical practice, I've been in the HIV space for so long. So the fact that I still questioned my abilities, even though these were things that I've been doing day in and day out in different roles, it was eye-opening now that I look back on it. Realize that a lot of us do this across the board in so many different realms, whether it be the
Mhm.
professional part of our lives or personal parts. We question ourselves. We need other people to confirm things that we should already know. And I
Mhm.
think that's just it's part of the journey and part of just maturing. And as you get older, you get wiser and you get that confidence that it just
Mhm.
takes a long time to build up.
Yeah, and thankfully, you were surrounded by the right people. You had the right voices pouring into you, mentoring you, that were
Yes.
able to identify those strengths in you that maybe you didn't even see in yourself or were not as certain of in yourself as the others were, because they're telling you, yes, you were the right person for this. And so obviously they were seeing it clearly when, as a person, it's natural for you to just have those, I guess, hang-ups or, am I the right person? Am I qualified enough for this? But I think that's amazing that you had those voices surrounding you, that community around you that saw the potential and saw the ability for you to do that. And so from HIV specialist, then you make the jump into an MSL role. And of course, I say the word jump very loosely because we all know it's tough breaking in industry, but talk about what that was like landing your first MSL role.
I would say not just a jump, that was a leap from a high-rise skyscraper. So I actually was not very familiar with a lot of industry roles prior to landing that prescriber role. In the clinic is when I started to meet a lot of medical science liaisons and patient liaisons, community liaisons working in different companies in the pharmaceutical industry. And I really started to get an itch, if you will, for the roles that they had. I thought it was amazing that these scientific experts, some PharmDs like myself, some PhDs, some MDs, NPs, PAs, all across the board, were available for me as a provider when I ran into that patient who wasn't the textbook patient and I really needed some assistance with how to navigate getting this patient on the appropriate therapy. There were experts there, and I
Mm.
could reach out to them and they could pull science that maybe I didn't have the time to go look up, or maybe it was a resource I didn't have access to. And they could really help me determine what was best for the patient. And it just seemed so different. It's a way to help patients, maybe not in the face-to-face setting, but help patients in a broader aspect. You're out there with the providers, you're providing the science, you're answering the questions. And I thought, you know what? This seems cool. It's different, gives you some other opportunities like travel and meeting all of these experts, these top tier thought leaders across different therapeutic areas. And I decided I wanted to try it. Well, then I started looking at open MSL positions and the job descriptions, and they all required MSL experience. So that was my first blow. Like, I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't have MSL experience. I've never been in MSL. So then I also started looking at the wording for some of these job descriptions, and some of the daily tasks seemed like things that were far beyond my reach that I hadn't done before. And talking to MSLs, I kind of built a network again of very supportive people. And I was actually connected with probably one of the most influential mentors I have met. Her name's Sidoni Neva. She's been in industry for a while, and she took the time to meet with me, a total stranger, sit down, ask about why I'm interested in the MSL path to make sure it was a good fit. We talked through it. And then she actually had me look at a job description, go through it, and really take the time to see what the wording looks like compared to what I do day to day and what I've done in previous roles as a pharmacist. And she made me understand that I'm more than capable of doing a lot of the day to day tasks that are involved with being an MSL. And she helped me kind of build that confidence. Now, when it came to not having experience, that was still a hurdle that was giving me a little bit of anxiety. But again, between Sidoni as well as other MSLs, they kept encouraging me that even though I didn't have experience as an MSL, I have experience as a healthcare provider. I have experience dealing with other experts and thought leaders regionally, locally. And I needed to make sure that I translated that to a hiring manager. And lots of practice, lots of rejection. I will say I applied for roles for months. It was over a year before I actually even got to talk to a human hiring manager. But I will say that was an exercise in persistence that definitely paid off. I landed my first MSL role with a company in dermatology, and just the struggle to get into the role made me want to really put everything into it and really learn as much about the role as I could and become the best MSL that I could.
Mhm.
So it was a long journey into becoming an MSL. Luckily, I landed with a company with an amazing field director who, again, became a really close mentor of mine. We still talk all the time. Her name's Dion Hearn. I'm sorry, I keep name dropping, but I want to make sure people understand it. These are really important people who've really helped me along the way.
Mhm.
But she really took me as a small little tadpole MSL and helped me grow and flourish. And I eventually, in that first year, got the Rookie of the Year award from the medical affairs team in that role. So again, another experience of doubting myself. I think a lot of that rejection that came along the way just compounded that, but I stuck with it. I had a really strong village around me.
Mhm.
And once I landed the role, again, a really strong network of people in the company, as well as people I'd met along the way who helped me excel and succeed there.
We could do a whole episode just on the importance of networking, but you're hitting on so many of those topics. It is so important to
Yes,
surround yourself and to find that person who is willing to pour into you and, to have that person who sees in you what you sometimes don't see in yourself. Also, I love that you pointed out how long it took you to break in the rejection that we have so many aspiring MSLs that we hear from that are like, I have been applying for months or a year or 6 months or however long it is, and I'm not getting any feedback. I'm not getting any traction. I'm not getting those interviews. What am I doing wrong? And so many times we tell them, you may not be doing anything wrong. This is how it is for everyone who breaks in. It's just the exception of the rule that are those folks you hear that are like, oh, I had one interview and landed the role. That's the exception.
definitely.
So for those people who are in those same shoes and feeling that imposter syndrome, that is not because you're unqualified. A lot of the times it's not because you don't have the right skills. It is just, this is how the process is. And so it's so easy for the imposter syndrome to be the loudest voice in the room. You're in that
Yes,
situation. And so I love that you shared your experience with that, and that you had to fight through the rejection, but then ultimately landed this fantastic role with this fantastic manager. And that, you have to overcome that imposter syndrome even through the
yes.
rejection. So thank you for sharing that. But aside from being, the pharmacy background and now MSL, you are a very big advocate for women's health. You do women's health writing, and this is just all alongside your MSL role. What drew you into that area and into the writing world and being such a big advocate for women's health?
I will say my experience in the HIV therapeutic area was really eye opening throughout all of those years, but especially becoming the prescriber
Mhm.
and really sitting down, having these one on one conversations and assessing people's risk and sitting down to figure out where people are with their understanding of what that risk looks like and how they can control their health in a sense and take ownership of things that are happening. And in a lot of those conversations with patients, I realized that there are so many women out here who, for whatever reasons, whether it is their background and upbringing, or unfortunately sometimes we're put in spots based on where we live or what we have access to, that we may not have the best understanding of our bodies and
Mhm.
how they work and what control we can have over the outcomes that we're presented with. And that was really what piqued my interest in how we engage and communicate with patients, not just patients, but even community partners and everyone as a whole. And that's what really piqued my interest in health content writing, is getting access to different websites and different organizations that would put educational materials out, some top notch, top tier, easily digestible things that anybody can understand, and some, while well intended, maybe not as easy for everyone across different socioeconomic backgrounds and educational backgrounds to be able to take in and
Mhm.
really get something out of. So, again, in a search for content for patients, I was introduced to a program that would help current healthcare providers develop their skills for health content writing. And that program really opened my eyes to the fact that I don't have to have a journalism background, I don't have to have an English background to be able to take the knowledge that I've learned over the years and share it in a written form with other people so that they could get the information and little tidbits that they need to live healthier and fuller lives. So that was the peak of my interest in health content writing. I actually took this course that I was introduced to through LinkedIn, of all places. And it was really fun. It was eye-opening. It was a course with other healthcare providers who did not feel we had the skills to be able to pull this off. And we fed off each other. We researched with each other. We critiqued one another, gave feedback, and really learned how to hone the skills of how to take this very complicated information sometimes. You're talking about things related to immunology, and you're talking about things related to women's reproductive health, and you break this down in a way that so many more people can understand it, make better decisions from it. But that was another case of something that I never thought that I could do because I didn't have the necessary specialized skills, quote unquote. But a lot of us, I think we take for granted all of the skills we do have, even if they don't have some fancy name or title, and that we can still use those and make a difference with them. So, yeah, that was my journey into health content writing, how I got started there.
And it sounds like you've surrounded yourself with another community,
Yeah.
which is ironic to hear you say none of us really felt like we had the skills to do this. So we were all kind of learning together because I mean, goodness, I can't, looking from the outside in, I can't imagine anybody better to do this sort of thing. It's fantastic that you surrounded yourself with this community of people and all kind of helped each other along. Well, let's dig more into the imposter syndrome and how that has shown up for you. I mean, you transitioned from different therapeutic areas, like going from HIV to dermatology and more of the immunology side. Did switching therapeutic areas play into feelings of self-doubt, having to kind of learn the new areas?
Well, of course, there was doubt there. I will say I have been surrounded, and you've already touched on this, for whatever reasons, by very encouraging people and people who always can see things that I don't see myself. So going from HIV to dermatology, my thoughts were these are two completely different therapeutic areas that have nothing to do with one another. And now I'm going to have to shift my brain and learn something that I have no knowledge of and try to pick it up and become an expert in a certain disease state in this TA. The thing is, again, someone had to sit me down and say, you've been working as a clinical pharmacist already, so you've got an understanding of pathophysiology of diseases, how the body works. You've been in HIV, which is immunology. The antivirals that we use are working to modulate the immune system. In dermatology, in the space I went into in particular, in psoriasis, a lot of the agents that are used are what we could call monoclonal antibodies. These are drugs that work by modulating the immune system. So there's overlap. And I think that is something that I'm learning, or maybe I've finally learned it, is when we are faced with something that seems unknown to us, we need to really take a step back, breathe, pause, and think about what do we know about this space, or what have we done before that has overlap with what we're going to do. And then let's build on that and let's just grow from there. Everybody started out not knowing something, no matter what the space is. Even your favorite dermatologist at some point had to be taught how to be your favorite dermatologist. So it was definitely a learning curve. I tried to take it with stride. Of course, anxiety and again, imposter syndrome will creep up when you are going to present something for the first time and you're going to present it to someone who's been practicing dermatology for 25 years. Well, of course, you're going to feel like I am not ready to do this. This person knows this inside and out. What can I do or what can I bring to the table? But the practice that you get, the more and more that you do that, you realize there is always something you can bring to the table. Everybody needs to fill a knowledge gap for something. Nobody knows everything. And I think that's been the biggest part is remembering that even if you don't know it today, you're not alone. Other people are in your shoes. There are people behind you who will be there as well. And you just have to put all the effort in to become knowledgeable about whatever the data sets and the background information are to help you have those conversations in that TA. But yes, imposter syndrome was huge, jumping from HIV to dermatology. And luckily, again, I've always had a village around me that helps me navigate through those waters.
And helps you connect the dots. And in the recruiting role, we sometimes make those, I guess we call them creative matches, where a lot of times we're kind of opening the eyes to an MSL or an MSL candidate about, yes, you do have the skills, because how, and even though you come from this background, this hiring manager doesn't have anyone like you on their team that has that unique perspective. So even if it is a different background or a different way of looking at things, it can be valuable to a hiring manager who has all of the same people on the team, and now they've got somebody who brings in a completely different point of view. And so it's
Yes.
not to be discounted for being somebody who has a different background, who is like the only one of their kind on the team. It's not always a bad thing. It can be a very big positive thing. And on that note, I guess, were there times in your career or your background where maybe you felt like you were the only one in the room? Whether it was your background, your experience, your perspective on something. Did you have that feeling ever of like going at something just being the only one like you?
Many times before. I will say I have been in positions where I'm the only non-MD in the room.
Ugh.
So I'm the only PharmD. And I think a lot of times we label ourselves and we walk into spaces and situations feeling like that label is being broadcast,
Mhm.
when we really need to just walk into situations ready to share what we can bring to the table. Let's
Mhm.
leave the labels aside. And once people see that you are there and you're competent and you really do have something to add to the conversation, to the topic, a lot of times people are not concerned about what the title is that you have or the label is that you have. Or even there have been situations where I've walked into meetings in previous roles where I'm the only woman who's walking into the room to sit down to have conversations. And I think rather than try to shy away from being the only one in that space, sometimes we should own it.
Mhm.
If I'm the only woman and we're talking about conversations that involve taking care of women, then I'm going to make sure that my voice is heard. I want to make sure that we're looking at the problems we're trying to solve from all different perspectives. If I walk into a room and I'm the only PharmD, it's the same thing. Or even in personal situations, I'll walk into the room and maybe I'm the only person there who's a parent.
Mhm.
So I'm bringing another perspective to the conversation. I think just across the board, we have to learn how to be comfortable sometimes with the uncomfortable. So being in spaces and being the only one there, but owning the space. And while you're owning the space, making room for other people to also share what their perspectives are with you as well. I think
Mhm.
that just, as you said, you've had people apply for roles and they're going to bring something new that the team doesn't have. I think that's huge. And I think that really is how groups and teams and families and people just make progress, is
Mhm.
bringing in lots of different perspectives.
And I love how you put it, that if you have that thought of, I'm wearing this like a badge, everybody can see I'm the only one here, I'm different, and if you walk in with that as your mindset, you may portray that. But if you walk in
Yeah.
and own it and have confidence and find your voice in that uniqueness, then that uniqueness doesn't become a hindrance. It becomes a selling point for you. And your voice says something different than what they're used to hearing, and it provides value in the conversation or in the situation. And so I love that.
And it's a hard thing. Even now, when you walk into those spaces, there is going to be anxiety there. And we're all thinking about what other people see when they see us. So that is normal. And everybody needs to know that's normal. But
Mhm.
sit with that for a moment and go from there. The more we practice it, I think the better we get at it. And I
Mhm.
think the MSL role is one of those places where you will definitely practice being the only one in the room. If you're coming in to talk to an entire team of providers and you are not a provider in that space, you are always the only one in the room, but you learn how to still show your value
Mhm.
and people appreciate your presence once they get to know you and understand that you have something to show and bring.
Mhm. And you said it best, learning to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, finding your voice, finding your confidence, let's talk about that. How has your role as a woman's health writer and an advocate, has that played a role in helping you maybe find your voice a little bit more and find your confidence?
I think my entire professional career has been helping me find that confidence, and it's still happening today.
Yeah.
Even going back to when I think of being in pharmacy school and being on rotations, clinical rotations, and you've got an attending physician who is grilling you and quizzing you on how to handle a specific patient case. Those first months, maybe even years of doing that, can be some of the most intimidating experiences you'll have. You may walk out of them literally shaking, but I believe it takes going through things like that to really build that confidence that you will eventually get with time. And I think that's the most important part, is to make sure people understand it's perfectly normal to feel those feelings, anxiety, to not be confident, to really be self-conscious about every little thing that's coming out of your mouth. And then moving into an MSL role, that is a huge part of what we do. We are presenting data and science and having these conversations with some of the most well renowned people on the globe,
Mhm.
sometimes on certain topics. And you really have to learn how to be okay with not knowing what you don't know,
Mhm.
being honest about what you don't know, and making sure that you're communicating there is a lot still that you have there to offer. I think when we are honest with people that we are not an expert all the time and we don't know things, it humanizes us some.
Mhm.
And that has often led to conversations with some people who are celebrities in their field for me, really coming down to earth, and we develop great relationships over time, and I can reach out to them and learn from them, and they're willing to reach out to me and learn from me. I think it's just a lot about remembering that nobody knows everything. Absolutely nobody knows everything. If you meet somebody who says that they know everything, run the other way because the smartest people are the people who know what they don't know.
Mhm.
And, we just bring that into all of our situations and conversations. And yeah,
Just being comfortable and saying, I don't know. Actually, I don't have the answer to that question. They can
yes,
tell if you're making it up. So saying I don't know is not a bad thing. Like you said, it makes you a real person. It gives you a point for follow-up if it's a thought leader that you're talking to. So it gives you a second conversation with them. I don't know, but let me
which
find.
is very important.
Yes. It gives you the ability to demonstrate your follow-up. So it's not a bad thing to say, I don't know. That's a great question, or I haven't heard that question before. Nobody knows everything. If you fumble or don't have an answer to a question, it doesn't mean you're unqualified. It doesn't mean you're not cut out for the role. It means you're human.
That is exactly it.
And it's all so much of this is just reframing your mind of I'm one of those people that dwells on stuff. I replay conversations in my mind that happened a decade ago and like I can't believe I said that thing. That person probably is still thinking of this and not at all.
They're
They're not.
not.
But it lives on in my mind. So
Yes.
all these thoughts can play in your head, but just reframing it in your mind, taking it from a negative and digging and finding how can this be a positive can really help with imposter syndrome because it takes your what you perceive as a shortcoming or a failing and uses it as an opportunity or growth experience. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Iron is sharpened in fire.
That is a great way to think about just the professional journey as a whole. We've
Yes.
all been there. We've made the mistakes. Those just make us better. We grow from them, or at least we should.
Exactly, exactly. Such great advice that everyone needs to hear, whether they have been an MSL for 20 years or whether they are struggling to land that first MSL role, whatever level you're at, we all deal with this imposter syndrome. Um, and in the professional life, of course, but do you ever see the imposter syndrome spilling over from your professional life into your personal life or vice versa? We talked about this before we
Yes.
started recording. We're both moms. And so sometimes I know I can struggle with not feeling like I'm doing the right thing as a mom and it kind of bleeds over into my professional life. What does that look like for you? How does that cross over if it does?
That is so huge. I think imposter syndrome is so strong, it crosses into everything. And yes, I believe parenting is probably one of the places for most people. We all want to be perfect parents. Those don't exist. But again, I think it's about the reframing. I think when you said that, you hit the nail on the head. If you're late for an event or you can't attend a soccer game, you have to still get through those moments. And like you said, you're replaying something in your head from 10 years ago. The other person hasn't thought about it probably since the moment that it happens. And I hear this a lot from other people who are in medical affairs, moms, dads who say they feel somewhat guilty about missing certain things occasionally for their children. And then people whose children are, high school age or college age, and they'll have the conversation, I hate that I wasn't there for these things. And oftentimes their child says, I don't remember you not being there. We all try to make up for those faults and those flaws, and I think we do a good job of it. We just don't realize it or
Mhm.
accept it. And children are just like KOLs in a sense. As long as you are still there to show them the value that you bring to the relationship, they're fine. Or even outside of children, I know with a busy travel schedule, I have to miss things for some of my friends sometimes. And that can be hard. I know I've missed baby showers, I've missed bridal showers. You still send a gift in lieu of, you call them the day of, you check on them. And then a few weeks later, when you talk about it, you realize the other person is grateful that you did what you could do.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of beat ourselves up for things, and we think about the negatives much longer than anybody else who's in the situation does.
Hmm.
And it's just, again, you've got to reframe that. And I
Hmm.
think that's the biggest thing, is just remembering that, make the most of the opportunities we do have and we'll be fine.
Hmm. Are there any other practical strategies that maybe you developed or that have helped you in the thick of imposter syndrome when you're dealing with it or feel like, gosh, I'm just really getting down on myself? What do you do to kind of dig yourself out of that?
I would say a mentor once told me, you write your pro and cons lists. So if I'm having imposter syndrome, say that I've been given an opportunity to be on a specific project, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't really know if I can handle that, or if I'm qualified for it. Can I juggle that? Make a list of, am I qualified for it?
Mm.
What are the qualifications I have? And you'll usually start to see that you can write a lot more than you thought you could. Or can I juggle that? Go ahead and write down how you would attempt to fit that into your calendar and how you would allocate the time for it. And you'll see that it's something that's doable. Now, that won't work for everything. Sometimes the reality is maybe it isn't the best opportunity for us, and maybe it's something we need to wait for. But I think when you put things on paper, it allows you to be a little bit more subjective
Mhm.
and really make those decisions and determine, is this the imposter syndrome that's keeping me away from this? Or am I truly maybe not in the best moment to handle whatever this is that's coming up?
And being able to realize sometimes the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is not right now, or not this opportunity,
Yes.
or not this, project or responsibility or whatever it is. Being okay with that, like you said. And if it doesn't line up, if it's going to be a situation that throws you into deeper imposter syndrome where maybe you aren't quite there yet and it would set you up for some sort of failure which would kind of feed into it, like just being able to realize the yeses, the nos, and the not right nows.
Yes.
And I love how you said putting it down on paper, because sometimes that just really allows you to think through and say, oh, I thought of some things that I didn't even come up with, like now that I'm kind of writing it down.
Putting things on paper, for some reason, it just makes them it makes things easier for me. I don't know why. I don't know if it's actually the time that it takes to write things and you actually start to let the wheels roll
Mhm.
and figure things out on your own, or if it's just sometimes reading something back to yourself, a light bulb goes off. So yeah, for me it's writing things on paper.
We keep coming back to this, but I think mentorship, we say it all the time, and you've demonstrated it in just some of the things you've talked about. Mentorship can be such a powerful tool for overcoming imposter syndrome too. Having that right voice, that positive influence, kind of help reframe your mind. You feel comfortable enough coming to them with your honest and true thoughts. Like, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel like I'm in over my head, or whatever it may be. And they can help reframe and encourage and point out your strengths in that area. So
Yes.
think you've definitely demonstrated how that's played out in your life and helped you overcome. And I think that that's a great message for our listeners to hear too, that having that community or that mentor feed into you can build your confidence as well. So we've talked about a lot of different tools and tips and things like that. If a new MSL or even someone aspiring to get into the MSL role, if you were in that mentor role maybe, and they came to you and said, I'm really struggling with not feeling like I'm cut out for this, or I'm not landing the interviews, maybe this just isn't the right path for me. They are struggling with that imposter syndrome. What is a big, maybe your number one piece of advice you would give them?
I think a lot of people don't realize how big the change is going from whatever your background is, whether you're a PhD in the lab or you're a practitioner seeing patients day to day. The switch to the MSL role will be a big shift. There will be a big learning curve, and sometimes great things come after a wait. Great things come after rejection. I've often heard a lot of people say rejection is often redirection. So just stick with it. Maybe the roles you aren't getting them because those aren't going to be the best environments for you to thrive. I had, again, so many rejections before that first role, but I landed in a position with an amazing national field director who poured so much into me and really made me believe that I could be a successful MSL. And she helped guide me into that position. And I think if I had maybe gotten on a different type of team with a different type of leader, my first experience would not have been as amazing as
Mhm,
the one that I had. So I think all of that rejection was just preparing me for the door that was going to open with the right person and the right team at the right time.
mhm,
So just stick with it. Keep your day job, keep going strong, and just keep chugging along. You're gonna send in those applications. You will get some immediate 5 minute later automatic rejections. I learned to not even pay attention to those. That wasn't a person that rejected me. That was a computer.
there you
They
go.
don't know any better. And even if you get that first interview and you don't hear back, or you make it to the final interview, I made it to a panel interview and I was not selected for the position. That is okay. That's just practice
Mhm,
for the next interview. But it's definitely well worth it. I believe strongly that the MSL role is probably the best career path there is out there. I
mhm.
think there's nothing like it, and it's definitely worth the wait. So stick with it. When you hear that little voice that's telling you that maybe it's you that is causing the rejection, I'm here to tell you it is not you. I've been there, I did it. I know several other people who've been there and done it. Talk to other prospective MSL candidates. Reach out. You can go through that journey together. I think it's
Mhm,
easier to do something when you're not doing it alone.
mhm.
So
Creates a
that's
community.
yes,
Mhm.
create that community and you'll get there. Just stick with it. And hopefully the rejection is leading you to the right fit for you.
Yeah, and for those people who land the first interview but don't get the second, or go through the panel interview but don't get the job, I mean, where were you this time a year ago? Were you even getting the first interview and now you've had a panel interview and a presentation? That's progress. I mean,
Yes.
you're not landed the role, you don't know what you were up against. I mean, you did great to get that far. I think, yeah, taking a step back and seeing the progress that you are making, even though you didn't get the job, you got to a final interview, and that's pretty darn good. So,
It's amazing to
yeah,
get that far.
yes. And landing the first interview, clearly they saw something. And again, you don't know what you're up against. You could be up against someone who's been an MSL for 20 years. I mean,
Yes.
that could be just how the cards were dealt, but obviously they saw something in you to give you that first interview. So look at the progress that you're making and take it for what it is. It's progress.
Progress and practice.
Yes. Yes, both important, both so important. The practice part, I mean, I think people take that for granted. It's so good to have a few interviews under your belt because you get better and you get more calm. You don't get so worked up. You know what questions to expect. It is good. It is a good thing. So I agree. Well, I know we're coming up on the end of our time here. I wanted to just do a couple of little quick rapid fire questions and
Let's go.
all right. So, what is one small daily habit that keeps you grounded?
You know what? So again, love music. I like to, whenever I can, whether it's in the car on a 3-hour ride for work or even in the car just after I've dropped my son off at school, making sure that I'm listening to something that's going to put me in a really good place for the day
Mhm.
is huge. And if you want to have a full-blown concert in the car by yourself and be the superstar for 10 minutes, I say go for it. Anything that just kind of lightens the mood and lets you just be human for a minute and not have to worry about things. Music does that for me.
Yes, yes, music. We are big proponents of that. We have a playlist we put out weekly, and it's such a mood setter for your week. If it's
Yes.
upbeat and fast tempo, I'm going to work better and faster that day if I'm listening to that. If it's slow and kind of dreary, I might be a little more moody that day. I don't know, but it is such a mood setter. I agree. I think that's
Yes.
fantastic advice. What is maybe the best as an MSL? What's some of the best career advice you've ever received in the MSL role?
The best career advice, I'm going to have to go back to being okay with knowing what you don't know. There is always something to learn, whether it's going to be internal processes at your company, learning who you go to get certain things done, or what the steps are to get certain things done. It's important to say, hey, I'm not sure about this and reach out to someone. I think
Mhm.
it's always better to ask so you can try to do it right the first time than to mess it up and then have to go back and fix it.
Yep.
And even when you're talking to thought leaders, if you don't know the answer to a question, that is perfectly fine. They know that you are not a human encyclopedia. I
Mhm.
think anybody would know that. Just let them know you don't know. And I will find out and I will get back to you. That's the most important part. Definitely don't try to make things up. People will know when you don't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, being okay with not knowing all the things all the time.
Mhm. And I think if you go in with that mindset, it clears the path for you to not stress yourself out, I guess. So
Yes.
that was I think that's great advice. Last question here. It's a fill in the blank question. Imposter syndrome is blank, but I've learned blank.
Imposter syndrome is strong. It is really strong and it can take you down, but you have to remember that you are still stronger than that.
Yes.
So when you realize it's creeping up on you, have your game plan ready and come back at it. Be ready to be on defense, offense, whatever you've got to do that day toward imposter syndrome to not let it really affect your day to day
Mhm.
and have you very anxious. And I think the biggest thing for that, a couple of things that have worked for me, having those people you can reach out to when you see it creeping up. You've got somebody that you can confide in and talk to who will help you stay realistic about what's going on, knowing that it's okay. It's human. It
Mhm.
is okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel like you aren't enough. It's okay to feel like you aren't prepared for something, but then take some time, sit with that, and figure out what you can do to reframe. I love that, Linda. Reframe how you're thinking about the situation.
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest thing with imposter syndrome.
You're absolutely correct. It's such a mental game, and being prepared for it is half the battle, and then having, the right tools in place to push through it is the rest of it, basically. Whether
Yes.
your community or just, a tip or a trick that you do, some sort of tactic of reminding yourself of who you are and what you bring to the table. That's so important. And so I just want to thank you so much for coming on our podcast and sharing such a vulnerable and personal topic because everybody deals with it, but it's such an under discussed topic. We all deal
Yes.
with it. Everybody feels like they're alone in it. And the fact is that we all can relate. And so I really hope that all of you who are watching or listening have been able to feel validated in your thoughts and your feelings and also learn that it's not just you dealing with this, that it's everyone deals with this. So if you have any questions about this topic, we do have a link in the show notes below. We'd love to hear from you. And you can look for Tiffany on LinkedIn and connect with her there. I'm sure she would love to stay connected with lots of folks and expand her network a little bit more.
Yes.
So thank you guys so much for joining us. Tiffany, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you sharing so much of your time.
And thank you for the opportunity. Again, this was great. So many people have poured into me over the years, and I just feel like it's always good when you get an opportunity to do the same for other people. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys for joining us. Join us for our next episodes. We have a few coming up that we're really excited about with some more special guests. Tiffany, thank you. And join us next time. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to share the link, let your friends know, and of course, connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you want more information on today's topic, please feel free to reach out. Be sure to check back soon as we continue to explore the topics that matter most to you in medical affairs.